Deputy Speaker, I rise today to outline in detail a quite tragic incident that took place in Ipswich, an incident that really shook the town and caused great upset and hurt, and hopefully, I hope, can spur some reform with regards to the criminal justice system. Richard Day, he was a constituent of mine, Richard Day, and I only had the opportunity to represent him for a short time, and I didn't know Richard Day, and I hadn't met him, but having met with his brother and having met with a lot of people who did know him and were touched by him, it's very clear that Richard Day was an incredibly popular man who touched the lives of a huge number of Ipswich residents. He was a 45-year-old man with 3 brothers. He was an engineer with UK Power Networks. He just completed 4 years of training. He was incredibly passionate about what he did. He was a season ticket holder at Ipswich Town Football Club. He was passionate about his town, he's passionate about his family, and he's passionate about his friends. In the words of his brother, Chrissy, he would give you his shirt off his back. That was the kind of man he was. He would have done anything for anyone. He was the sort of man who deserved only good things to happen to him, and good things to happen to those who were closest to him. On the 22nd of February 2020, he went to see Ipswich-Oxford football game. Ipswich lost 1-0, which has happened a fair bit over the last few years, but he was I think probably got a bit used to it. So was in good spirits despite the fact that Ipswich lost that game. He went to the Cock and Pie pub. He met up with his brother Chrissy, and his younger brother was actually involved in a music band, and he went somewhere else in town to see his brother playing, and for the first time in a long time, all 4 brothers were together on that night, Saturday the 22nd of February. He was the oldest brother, and not only did he provide invaluable support to each one of his 3 brothers, but he also cared for his mother, who had health problems, and he did everything he could to support her. After the gig, he walked home to watch, I believe it was a boxing fight that was taking place that night. It was before midnight, and he walked up St Matthew Street, which is a pretty prominent street in Ipswich. It's a street that I myself have walked along when I've walked up to where I live after, going to a bar or a restaurant. Earlier that day, Andrea Cristea, who had a youth detention order and who was awaiting sentencing for a violent crime, frankly was going about his business pretty determined for trouble, pretty determined to cause a lot of damage to someone, to cause a lot of grief to someone. Unfortunately, that person was Richard Day. Richard Day was set upon by this particular individual. He was attacked violently. There was a punch thrown to a neck, which would end up being the lethal blow. Far from offering assistance, because we could say, well, it got a bit out of hand, it was something which happened, but far from offering assistance when Richard Day lay on the ground, dying, he went through his pockets, stole his wallet, and was seen standing over my constituent as he was dying, and he was laughing. This happened in the town that I represent, and it happened before midnight, and it happened in a prominent place. Clearly, this has caused immense upset to the family of Richard Day, all of his friends, and everyone knew him. But it also shook the town, and frankly, I don't really think that we've recovered from it. I was very thankful to my Right Honourable friend, the Home Secretary, for visiting Ipswich in March 2020. I spoke to her about this incident, and which had caused great nervousness in the town, because frankly, there have been many antisocial behaviour problems in the town that I represent. And when something like this happens, it causes great unease. And I was grateful for the Home Secretary to visiting Ipswich, talking to residents and talking to the local police force. So that is the effect of what happened on the family in the town. In 26th of April 2021, a judge issued a sentence for Mr. Cristea, which was, he got 4 years in a Youth Offenders Institute. But of course he will be let out automatically halfway through. So frankly, it's pointless calling it 4 years. It's not 4 years, it's 2 years. This particular individual had already served a significant amount of time on remand. So frankly, we are looking at this individual being released incredibly soon and presumably back on the streets of Ipswich. I haven't spoken to a single person, not a single person, wide range of views on law and order issues, not a single person in the town, and not a single person I've spoken to about this particular sentence believes it's appropriate, believes that it delivers justice. They believe it is far, far from that. So I did write to the Attorney General to ask the Attorney General to see if they could review it to the Court of Appeal. I knew it was a long shot, because I knew that in some senses, and the family did feel that the judge's hands are kind of tied. All of this is to do with the Sentencing Council guidelines. But we thought we'd give it a try. We were unsuccessful. And I understand the reasons why it was unsuccessful. And I'm grateful for the letter I received from my right honourable friend, the Solicitor General, who sent me a letter and then discussed it with me offline as well to explain her immense sympathy with the family, but why she felt she was in the position that she was in. So the consequences, I think there's probably 3 consequences I can really think about now. One is the consequences for the family, and their belief is that no justice has been served. As the victims, as the family of the victim, their confidence in the criminal justice system has been shaken as a result of this. They are so far away from feeling like it's almost an insult, they believe, this pitiful sentence. What kind of deterrent does it provide? Anybody else potentially involved in this kind of illicit behaviour? When somebody who behaves like this can get away with it. And there's also the consequence of public safety. As I said before, this particular individual who has committed multiple crimes before he ended up in the Offenders Institute where he currently is, could well be back out on the streets of Ipswich again. And how can we guarantee that he won't do something similar again? The judge said that he took into account public safety, but that an extended sentence wouldn't help the situation. I find that hard to believe. Why am I doing this? Why did I apply for this adjournment debate? Because this is only my 3rd adjournment debate. I did so in a sense because I wanted to firstly put on record the remarkable man that I've learned about, the contribution he made to his family and to his town, and that he should never be forgotten, but also the sense of anger felt by not just his family, but really everyone in the town, and to hopefully try and spur some of us to think about what the consequences of this are and how unhealthy it is that so many people's confidence in the criminal justice system is so shaken by a sentence like this, a sentence that we can all look at and know is wrong. And I simply don't think it's enough to abdicate responsibility and say, oh, well, it's a sentencing council, it's this, it's that. Ultimately, people look to their elected representatives to put in place a law and order system that they can have confidence in, they have faith in, and they believe delivers justice. So I do believe that this House, this government, need to look at the system and take appropriate action to make sure that sentences like this are not issued in the way they are. Because to me, this was manslaughter, and it was manslaughter that Mr. Cristea was found guilty of. But for me, it was an incredibly sinister kind of manslaughter, one in which he's shown no contrition whatsoever for the damage that he's done and for the life he took away, that will never, ever be forgotten by the family of Mr. Day. It does seem wrong that If he'd been over 18, because he was 16 when the incident took place, he was 17 when he was sentenced, it does seem wrong. It does seem wrong. But I understand if he was over the age of 18, he probably would have got something like 9 years. And there is just such a dramatic difference if you're a 17-year-old as opposed to if you're a 18-year-old. Almost more, I believe, than the difference between if you're a 12-year-old and a 17-year-old. I understand the government are looking at a sliding scale in relation to murder, but nothing, I believe, in relation to manslaughter, which is what we talk about today and which is what has caused such immense destruction to the lives of Richard Day. I'm very serious about the point about public safety. I don't know what the plan is for Mr. Cristea when he comes out of where he is at the moment. My view is I don't want him ever to step foot in the town that I represent ever again. I believe that he's an appalling man. I believe he could do further damage, and I would like an assurance that he will not be back in the town that I represent. I don't know what his nationality is. I believe he's not a British national, I understand, but I may be wrong. I don't know whether he's been able to apply for settled status whilst he's been in the criminal justice system. If he has done, I find this ludicrous. And I would think there's a very reasonable argument to be made for deportation. I see very little redeeming features in this individual. I think he's had nothing but a negative impact on our country and our town. And at the very least, if we cannot look at his sentence, it would be some comfort to know that he's going to be deported. Yes, either way.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I commend the Honourable Gentleman for Ipswich for his bringing this matter to the House tonight. I think he's done his constituents proud, and I believe his dutiful attention is on record, and we thank him for it. Does the Honourable Member not agree that the automatic halving of sentences should not apply to cases involving manslaughter, and that we in this House have a duty to the families of victims to ensure that changes are made to legislation in every area of the UK which may enable his constituents killer to serve only 10 months after sentencing? He's absolutely right. He should be getting more.
I absolutely agree with the Honourable Member Strangford, who I'm very honoured has made an intervention into, I think, the second out of 3 adjournment bases. I actually don't think you've intervened in all of them, actually, but no, I completely. Look, the government have made some very good moves. They've ended automatic release for those found guilty of some very serious offences. So, if you get sentenced to 25 years in prison, no longer are you let out automatically halfway through. So there have been some moves in the right direction. But I agree. I think we need to go further. And I'm quite old-fashioned, but I like things to be what they called in the tin. So if you get 4 years, you get 4 years. If you get 2 years, you get 2 years. If you get 9 years, you get 9 years. And I think there should only be, unless there's exceptional behaviour and a very good reason for early release, then you shouldn't get early release. Don't call it 4 years if it's not 4 years. I mean, I don't know if that makes... But there is a wider point here, though, about the extent to which us as elected representatives can shape these issues, because I do think the public should have input into our law and order. I don't think we should be scared of trying to have an influence. But I'll just conclude now, because I would like the Minister obviously to have time to reply. But I guess why I wanted to have this debate, I wanted to put on record Richard Day, the man that he is, and how he will be remembered. And he will always be remembered. He will always be remembered. Because I'm not just saying this. He was loved, much loved, by a very large number of people in the town. He's a typical Ipswich man. Good, honest, good values. Patient with his football team. And he deserves for there to be a legacy, which involves us remembering him, but also being determined that other families don't have to go through the pain that his family had gone through. So that is how I would like to leave this debate, and I would say to the Minister that I would be very grateful if he could outline to me what steps are going to be taken to strengthen our criminal justice system, to make sure that people like Mr. Cristea pay a much, much higher price for the unbearable pain they have inflicted. Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker.